Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We are jumping right into the ultimate power source for the human body. Have you ever actually stopped to think about what's happening when you take a deep breath before a heavy lift? Or when you're completely out of breath after a sprint? Today, we're unpacking the incredible biology of how our bodies fuel physical movement. By the time we wrap up, I promise you'll look at every single breath you take in a totally new way. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be hitting 1. The respiratory engine, 2. Pathway to the lungs, 3. The mechanics of breathing, 4. Gaseous exchange in action, and finally, 5. Fueling athletic performance. Let's dive in.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the respiratory engine, and its foundational purpose.
So, at its absolute core, your respiratory system is basically a bustling two-way street of gaseous exchange. It connects your internal body with the outside world. On one side of this street, it's pulling in life-giving oxygen and dumping it straight into your bloodstream. And on the flip side, it's acting as your body's vital cleanup crew, actively removing the carbon dioxide waste that you produce during cellular metabolism. If you're an athlete or honestly just someone who wants to optimize your daily energy, understanding this fundamental give and take is absolutely essential.
But here is the real million-dollar question, right? We all know we need oxygen, and we know we have to exhale carbon dioxide. But how exactly does an invisible, weightless puff of air floating around your head physically turn into the athletic endurance that lets you run a 5K or power through a workout? Well, let's trace the journey.
Moving right along to Section 2, Pathway to the Lungs, the journey of a breath.
Okay, picture this. Air first enters your system through either your nose or your mouth. From there, it travels straight down into the pharynx. Now, the pharynx is kind of fascinating because it's actually a shared pathway. It handles both the air you breathe and the food you eat, directing food to the esophagus and air to the trachea. Next up, the air hits the larynx. You probably know it as your voice box. Sure, it holds your vocal cords, but crucially for our survival, it acts as a biological shield. It literally protects your airway when you swallow so your lunch doesn't go down the wrong pipe. After safely passing the larynx, we hit the trachea, which then splits off into the bronchi and those tiny little bronchioles.
Let's zoom in on that trachea or windpipe for a second. The trachea isn't just some flimsy, floppy hose. It's a rigid tube lined with these incredibly tough cartilage rings. Think of these rings as, well, literally biological armor. They are there to strictly maintain the tube's structural integrity, totally preventing your windpipe from collapsing inward when the air pressure shifts around while you breathe. Once the air blasts through this armored tunnel, the trachea branches into the left and right bronchi, which then branch into smaller and smaller pathways, the bronchioles, reaching deep into your lungs.
Which brings us to Section 3, the mechanics of breathing and the dynamic physics behind it all.
You know, before we even talk about chest muscles, we actually have to talk about the brain. Breathing is primarily an automatic process, managed by a dedicated control room called the respiratory center, tucked right back in your brainstem. This center, and I mean constantly, monitoring your blood. It acts as a highly sensitive thermostat. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a chemical sensor, regulating exactly how fast and how deep you breathe based strictly on the current levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide in your blood. If CO2 starts building up, your brainstem immediately fires off a signal. Hey, breathe faster and deeper, we gotta clear this waste out.
So when that urgent signal from the brainstem finally hits your chest, what actually happens? Well, notice the dramatic contrast here between inspiration, breathing in, and expiration, breathing out. Inspiration is a highly active muscular process. Your diaphragm contracts and physically flattens out, while your intercostal muscles, those are the ones between your ribs, they contract too. Working together, they pull and expand your entire rib cage. On the other hand, expiration is mostly just relaxation. The diaphragm and intercostal muscles simply let go and relax, which naturally shrinks the overall volume of your chest cavity. But why does flexing and relaxing these muscles actually cause air to move in and out? It's literally just the physics of pressure gradients. It's so cool. When you breathe in, expanding your ribcage increases the volume inside your chest. By increasing that volume, you physically drop the air pressure inside your lungs, so it's actually lower than the air pressure in the room around you. Air just naturally rushes in, riding down that pressure gradient to fill the void. Then, when you breathe out and those muscles relax, the chest volume shrinks. That sudden squeeze spikes the pressure inside your lungs, making it higher than the outside air, and boom, air is forcefully pushed back out until everything equalizes. It's a beautiful, non-stop cycle of volume manipulating pressure.
Moving into Section 4, Gaseous Exchange in Action. This is the microscopic climax of our journey.
Way down at the very end of those tiny bronchioles we talked about earlier, we find the alveoli. These are microscopic, balloon-like air sacs, and they are completely wrapped in a dense, bustling network of tiny blood vessels called capillaries. This microscopic junction right here, this is the absolute ultimate destination of your breath. This is the exact spot where the actual, literal exchange of gases takes place.
Let's break this cellular exchange down. The walls of these alveoli are incredibly, unbelievably thin. This allows the fresh oxygen you just inhaled to easily diffuse right across the barrier and slip straight into your bloodstream. Once it's in the blood, that oxygen tightly grabs onto hemoglobin molecules inside your red blood cells, totally ready to be rushed off to the muscles and tissues that desperately need it. At the exact same time, carbon dioxide, that metabolic waste product, is traveling the opposite direction. It diffuses out of your blood, crosses back into the alveoli, and just waits there to be expelled from your body on your very next exhale.
And finally, Section 5, Fueling Athletic Performance. Let's bring this all back to you.
Look, understanding the nuts and bolts of the respiratory system is an absolute game changer for athletes. When you know exactly how this internal engine works, you can consciously optimize your oxygen intake during a workout to seriously boost your endurance. But here's the most inspiring part. This system adapts to demand. By doing regular aerobic exercise, you are actually physically enhancing your lung function. You are literally training your body to become wildly more efficient at delivering oxygen to your working muscles. You're building your fitness from the inside out.
And wow, that brings us to the end of our anatomical journey today. We've traced a single breath from the nose, through the biological armor of the trachea, all the way down to those microscopic alveoli, and we explored the awesome physics that makes it all happen. So I want to leave you with this to chew on. Knowing just how adaptable this entire system is, how is your next aerobic workout going to reshape your respiratory engine? Get out there, take a deep breath, and put this incredible machine to work. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and as always, keep learning.